And welcome to John Gibson's Talking Real Estate. I'm Mark Warren. This is John Gibson. Welcome, the Pioneer Edition.
Thank you, Mark. Great to be here.
And brought to you by locatenegotiate.com.au. And just going here to your website, I'm going to take a little quote because I love this quote. So many people have an interest in property and transact in property, but unfortunately, so many people get it wrong. It takes 5 minutes to get involved in a property transaction and then a lifetime to get out. It's a very wide-ranging comment, but it's also a reason why people should be looking for advice, perhaps, from John Gibson, locatenegotiate.com.au, buyer's agent, seller's advocacy. That's a subject for another podcast, not the first. And a little later in the show, a very special guest.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to this one. It'll be fantastic.
Yeah, close to home, pardon the pun.
Oh, absolutely.
Tell us about Locate Negotiate.
Well, I set this business up well over 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I come through the real estate system, owned and operated my own real estate down in the Shire. Decided that there was a real gap in the market to have a business which could have a number of solutions. Big part of that is the buying, the property buying side for people. Whether you're, a first-home buyer, an owner-occupier buyer, someone who wants to buy an investment, residential, commercial. I deal with the men off the street. I deal with high net individuals. I deal with businesses. So I thought there was a real need in the marketplace to be able to come up with a solution for those people. And at the end of the day, when people are buying property, make sure they buy right. And at the end of the day, 10 years down the track, or 5 or 3, whatever, that their property they buy is going to appreciate well, and they can look back at it and go, that was a good decision.
How long have you been in the real estate game?
Well, I went in it straight out of school. I did work experience for a local real estate agent, and my dad did business with him.
Who was that?
It was LJ Hooker at Miranda, or a man named Rod Holder, a highly respected guy in the industry, and he took me on and put me on as an apprentice, and then I went through and did the course, and then worked for a couple of independents along the way, started up my own business, and then...
How long tell me, and please correct me, was it Gibson and Partners?
Gibson Partners.
Gibson Partners.
Yeah.
How long did you have that set up?
Well, that was set up for 10 years. So I decided to get out of that and start this property advisory business. And I had a lot of experience in a lot of different areas because I grew up through the system, through property management, and I had my toe in the water with a lot of different sectors in the real estate, whether it's project marketing, commercial, industrial, residential, project marketing. So I had a taste of a lot of different sectors and felt that over 20 years had a lot of good experience, and thought that, well, I wanted to start a property advisory business, not only help people when they're buying property, but helping businesses doing tenant representation, commercial tenant representation, negotiating leases, finding properties for...
Are they mainly commercial leases, obviously?
Yeah, most of them are commercial leases. If someone's got a property, we can do, consultancy work, development feasibility, and we can also got the seller's advocacy, which we help people when they're going to sell their asset, help them manage that process for them. It's a bit like a mortgage broker for going to get a loan. We're like a broker, to help people when they're offloading the asset. We appoint agents on their behalf.
So why do I use a buyer's agent? Why not just a real estate agent? I mean, there's property spruikers left, right, and centre. Why do I use a buyer's agent?
Well, first of all, when someone's going to buy a property and they're going to look at properties, they're dealing with real estate agents. So at the end of the day, who's paying the real estate agent? People selling. So unless that person's going in to buy a property, a lot of people going in green. Look, there's some people who are well attuned to the property market and good at it, and got a good eye for it and do their homework. But many don't do the homework, and many don't seek advice when it comes around property. And it's one of the biggest investments they'll ever make in their life. Yet they're willing to roll the dice or go it alone. And
you said to me, Mark, who's the real estate agent really working for? We're not here to pull punches. I want to know why I use a buyer's agent. You said, hey, Mark, we're who is the real estate agent really working for?
As I just said, they're getting paid by the agent, by the seller. So no one's representing the buyer. So that's what a buyer's agent do. We represent the buyer to make sure that we go in and we do the due diligence, the research, and we come up with a buying strategy, and we try and negotiate the best possible deal on their behalf. As often for an investment property, we'll look at a variety of different properties for people. We might look at 10 properties and rule out 9 of them and say, this is a good property for you, and then this is why. And we'll do all the reporting and be able to show the client why this is a good buy and justify it and put it in writing and say, these are the methodologies we've come up with to work out what it's worth. And at the end of the day, we want to buy the property for the client, make sure they don't pay overs, and make sure it's a good property which has good fundamentals, which is where there's going to be a good chance that it's going to appreciate well over time.
I could just go into a testimonial here as to why I used your services when I purchased my first property or my second property, but it speaks for itself. But commercially speaking, in black and white, you spoke to me during the week and you said, Mark, you are going, and I know this because if I look at the capital gain versus what I paid for the property, inclusive of your fee, it's not what you purchase the property for, it's how much you actually, it is, but it's how much you save in the process by having you in the corner. I know that I saved money by having your services at my disposal. Absolutely.
Well, you can do the calculations. If you can just do an example, if you bought a property was on the market for $1 million or $900,000, and then if we can negotiate, a better discount on that price, and then if we can get you into an area which is going to have 5.5% capital growth versus the property you might buy, it might have 4.5% capital growth. If you do that calculation and see the savings you make on interest and do the calculation of the actual how you're going to come out on front with the appreciation of the property, I think over a 10-year period you could be hundreds of thousands of dollars in front just by negotiating $20,000 better on the asking price, and then
knowing the long term, the big
and getting
picture.
A property which is better positioned, which is going to appreciate better. The rate it goes up per year might be, as I said, 5 or 6%, versus the one you buy might be 4.5%. I think that if you do the calculation over 10, we have done this for clients and show them and say, look, if we can just do these things, these simple things. They sound simple, but it's hard in reality. Yeah. But if we can get this outcome, you will be so much better off down the track, rather than rushing into something which you don't do your homework, and then at the end of the day, people are buying property because one day they're going to want to sell it, and they want to say, well, was it a worthwhile process? Did we come out of it financially ahead?
So you just talked about saving because you are able to negotiate that purchase price. But you also mentioned something else, knowing about areas and doing your due diligence and knowing perhaps and reading the market to the point that knowing that there's more capital gain and growth in this market. And then you started talking hundreds of thousands of dollars in regards to potential savings or profit for the person purchasing the property rather. Not playing narc, but playing devil's advocate without warning. So Mr. Mum and Dad buyer at home.
This is a long question, by the way.
Yeah, it is. I'm sitting there with access to realestate.com. I'm sitting there with access to Domain. And we think that we can get the same and access the same information as you.
Look, everything looks good in the brochure when it comes to property. Yeah. So, I think that most people are very comfortable when they're, let's just talk about investment property. Most people are very comfortable when they're buying a property in their own backyard. They've got a bit of an idea what it's worth. But when I think when people are buying investment property, they should look out their own area, spread the wings and see look at other areas, other suburbs, maybe even other states, and just, depending on their budget. And it's where people get it wrong so often is that they go out of their own area and they're not really confident about prices, what things are worth, and they don't do the homework. So often that they're buying property and they end up paying over the odds for something, and often that's because They get in. When most people set up to buy a property, they come out, they're all gusto, they've got their loan approved, they're ready to go, they're enthusiastic.
Excited,
and they come out of the blocks fast. And
So you are, in fact, you can be.
No, but
you feel like an impulse.
Let me finish. But and then they will either start the journey, but often they don't stick at it. After a while they'll get, geez, this is harder than I thought. Oh, I've got to have that open house. It's out of the area I live. I've got to go over the other side of Sydney, or we're looking for something in Queensland. I can't quite get to it. We've seen something, we kind of like it, but we're not sure. See, any good property won't be on the market too long, generally, unless it's overpriced.
Wow. Say that again. Reinforce that. Say it again.
Most property, good property, which is reasonably priced, located in, let's say a blue chip area, won't last for too long, generally speaking. So
you don't care about the economy as such.
People come out of the blocks and they get into, and they might find that right property. Some will find that right property, some won't. And then as the process goes on, they might be a month and a half down the track, 2 months in, then they get impatient. Then all of a sudden they buy a property because they just thought, bugger this, I'm buying something. So that's where people can go. That's just one example where people can go wrong. And the other one is, I could go on this for an hour or two, but, people, we're a fee-for-service business, but people will, when it comes to property, there's property spruikers out there who will, marketing.
You talked about property spruikers during the week also, and you said, and I can relate to that as I have my real estate license actually, but I can relate to my core business is ad land and advertising, and we hear about developments left, right and centre, whether it's digital, whether we're consuming it online, television or radio, about massive developers spruiking all of these different developments.
Well, the problem is
you made some very good points.
A lot of these spruiking companies were in Sydney, and you don't really hear too much of them about them in Sydney. Where they're palming people into sort of
this story.
Regional Queensland, a mining town. It's taking off. These guys are the masters of putting a story around something and making it sound great. They have seminars. They get people in a room. They sell it to people, and people fall into that trap. And they, at the end of the day, these spruikers, they're not getting paid by the buyers.
No.
They're getting paid by generally like the developers.
Uh-huh.
Why do developers need these people anyway? If they were selling good property in good areas,
okay, but
they use the traditional methods. They might use a local agent to sell the property, who advertise it, and people buy them. But they use these marketing agencies to come in, put a story around it, and sell it to these people. And often, the amount of people who have come to me and said, "Look, I've bought a couple of properties 3 or 4 years ago. It was in regional Queensland, and we're going in there to buy one. We end up buying two. Mm-hmm. The bank have had a valuer in there. It's worth less than what we paid for it. When we first bought the property, there was a rental guarantee for 2 years. Now having problems trying to lease it out. I get back to it is that who are these people getting paid? Who's paying these people? Well, it's the developer.
You also said to me, stop you right there. You also said to me, Mark, why are they giving you rent free for 2 years? You said that to me. And I went, well, I don't know the answer. Tell me the answer.
Well, often they build this into the overall, the overall price.
I think I said because they were hesitant in regards to finding tenants.
Well, first of all, don't get me wrong. There's some very good builders and developers who do have got a very good reputation out there.
Okay.
So let's just make that clear. But there are people who, these guys go in and they buy in these towns which most people haven't even heard of. So they put a story around it, people fall for it, they go in and they buy these properties, and then it's all of a sudden they were thinking that this is going to be a great story, we're going to be able to buy this, we're going to sit on it, and next thing you know it, 5 years later, it's just been a horror show and they've got to get out of it. And often the people are getting, how my advice to get out of it, what do we need to do? Or they have got out of it and have engaged me to go, okay, we want to reinvest. What's your recommendation? Can we come and see you? And can we talk it through? So, I mean, we as a business, we're trying to steer people into the right property. We're all about buying, more or less blue chip property. There's a bit of generally a traditional growth there. There's some historical growth there. Can back it up. And, at the end of the day, it's a fairly safe bet that, 5-10 years down the track, they're going to walk away and, there's going to be some profit in it for them.
This is Talking Real Estate with my great friend John Gibson, and brought to you proudly by locatenegotiate.com.au. Back on the other side of this. And welcome back. This is Talking Real Estate with John Gibson, and brought to you by locatenegotiate.com.au by John Gibson. Locatenegotiate.com.au, episode 1, Talking Real Estate with John Gibson. John, all these services, tell me about the team.
Well, obviously we've got a number of solutions and services we have for our clientele, whether it's, the buying side of it, we've got people here on the ground, or whether it's in Queensland, we can handle it, so all our guys are experienced. I'm in the engine room, I'm doing the work as well. Whether we're doing work for a business, often, businesses engage us to do, negotiate leases or even buy property for them. Generally we've got a very good team, an experienced team around me, and you need it. There's no way I could do this without them. And moving forward, I think that we're hoping to, expand into other states and, keep that high quality.
But I can utilise your services right now in Victoria, in Queensland, and obviously no problem at all. You've got people on the ground. You've got an extensive network of industry people and expertise.
Absolutely, and you need it. So we need to be able to take on the business and service it and not spread ourselves too thin. So, we're all about quality and making sure that we get that repeat business from these people and keeping them happy and they get the right outcome at the end of the day.
I'm looking at your website now, your freshly revamped website now. Buyer's agent and auction bidding. Seller's advocacy is an entirely different ball game, and that's a podcast or 2 or 3.
Well, there's plenty to talk about there, and it's a service which hasn't really been tapped into, but we've been doing it for years, and it works extremely well. But again, we could talk about that for an hour.
The website, revamped, refreshed, looks fantastic. So it's locatenegotiate.com.au. Buyer's agent and auction bidding. I will ask for a comment. Seller's advocacy is an area that we're going to spend considerable time. It's a podcast or 10. So, but you are very much in that space and an area for growth.
Oh, look, it is an area for growth. It's not many people know about this service, but the work we do in it is it's growing all the time. It's just helping people when they're offloading an asset to make sure they get the outcome. That's the snapshot answer. Mm-hmm. But I can give you more meat on the bone in terms of detail about that, and we'll do that in another episode. Yep. But if someone's offloading an asset, speak to us first, because we just want to make sure that we get the right outcome for the clients when they're offloading it. And look, there's a process to it, but we can talk about it further.
Watch this space. Seller's advocacy. Locatenegotiate.com.au. Consultancy and the research service. Self-managed super funds, property audit assessments, tenant and business representation, aged care and family assist. It's all there. Locatenegotiate.com.au. And this is John Gibson. And John, it would be remiss of me, ignorant in fact, and disrespectful actually, not to talk about your family. You're the son of 2 wonderful parents, but I know what it's like to walk in the giant shoes. Some could say in the shadows of greatness, or whatever you like. What's it like to be the son of Jack Gibson?
Well, I think he's been passed for a number of years now. So, I think that, on reflection, I look back and it was a blessing to be able to grow up in, as his son. And, I had wonderful parents. Dad is obviously a bit of an icon, And he's
the original super coach.
And he's talked about to this day, and it's amazing how many people I bump in the street and they still talk about the old man. Mum being the matriarch of the family, man, she was a good woman, and I think of her every day. And most people love my mum, and she was one hell of a lady.
Judy Gibson, the matriarch. I love that you said that. So most people in the street, you just talked about it then, most people, including our guest who's coming up, they were scared of Jack. I think what you're saying is the real boss, that was Judy Gibson.
Oh, without doubt.
Shivers, look at you. Oh, without doubt.
Oh, without doubt.
You're the youngest of 6 children. Tell me the bros and sisters' names just again.
I was the youngest of 6. We had 3 girls, 3 boys, and Susan, Tracy, Joanne, and then there was Luke, Matthew, and myself.
Yeah.
So we had a one hell of a upbringing, and it's been a great journey.
1954 is the year. You were talking to me earlier. There's a picture of Mum there, is there not? Miss Bondi, 1954.
Yeah, Miss
wow.
Bondi, Miss South Pacific, and she has there's an iconic photo which is in the National Archives of Mum at Bondi Beach. She's probably got one of the most recognisable faces, but most people don't really know that is actually my mother, and it's Judy Gibson, and she's.
God bless her.
She's passed now, but she's always remembered.
Wow, just amazing family history. And so living in Cronulla?
Well, I was born and bred in Cronulla. I mean, Dad was born in Kiama. Mum was from Bondi Way. Yeah. And Dad grew up at Caringbah, that's a neighbouring suburb to Cronulla. Yeah. And very poor upbringing. And Dad's eldest sister and brother put Dad through school, more or less. Mm-hmm. And Dad went to they put him through at St Greg's at Campbelltown, and but he did leave at in his early teens, and then worked a number of different jobs. Like they did in that area. It was a tough era, and he worked everything from the railways all the way through. You name it, he did it. And obviously the rest is history. But in terms of his property,
the original super coach.
Yeah, but he was they had the house there in South Cronulla, which he built. And it was back in the late 60s, and it was pretty much up until last year, it was looking exactly the same as it did in the late 60s. He built it. It was a house, and then he moved around to built a house in 1970 around the very end of South Cronulla in a famous swimming hole called Salmon Hall.
You've told me about it.
Yeah, it's one of the most, it's to this, we'll grow up, and it's the most magnificent swimming hole on the sea there, and he built that house, and it's to this, it's super popular now. Everyone goes there, and it's a great little inlet, and you get the boats and people swimming, and
Mate, Warhope, the Warhope farm, and Dad built a footy field at the farm, and he took the teams up there for pre-season training, Parramatta and Cronulla Sharks, Rocky Laurie country. I think Rocky Laurie, and I think Mark Laurie Pebbles.
Well,
wow.
Well, back then, Dad was riding horses and breeding horses, and we went through that stage. And he used to say, in the end, never invest in anything that eats. And because I don't think there was a lot of money in it, but
he invested a lot of time in footballers.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So what you had this. He built this part of the property. He built this, got the graders in, the excavators in, and just built this football field. So in pre-season, he used to take up Parramatta, and then I think even the Sharks went up there for 1 year as well. But they used to play their, a pre-season game against Warhope, and as you said, Rocky Laurie, Mark Laurie country up there, icons to that area. So, I mean, if you speak to any of those Parramatta players from back there, they have fond memories of their time there, and there's many a story of what happened up there, and it brings back a lot of fond memories.
What made you leave or pass on Gibson and Partners, bringing it back to real estate? You're in the area, you're in the Shire, you've been in the game a long time. You saw the niche.
Oh, look, to be honest with you, the reason I get out of it is because at that stage I had this idea of what I wanted to do and start up this advisory business. I knew I just had just felt that there was a gap in the marketplace, and the traditional real estate, I was very comfortable. It was a good little business, and it still is to this day. I'm not involved in it, but I was getting a bit stale myself, and I need to re-energise myself.
Yeah.
But I wanted to stay into stay in the real estate space and the property space. So I kicked off this business, got out of that, and started this off. But it was like any business when you're kicking it off. It's you start from ground zero, and you got to grow it. And thankfully that I'm starting to come out the other side, and things are going all right.
They certainly did come out okay. This is Talking Real Estate with John Gibson, and on the other side of this, John, a pretty special guest, close to home, I suppose you could say.
I'm looking forward to this.
All right. This is Talking Real Estate with John Gibson, and proudly brought to you by locatenegotiate.com.au. Back after this. Welcome back. This is Talking Real Estate with John Gibson, and brought to you by locatenegotiate.com.au. And we've covered some territory, and I think the most beautiful part of that so far, the journey, is Miss Bondi, Mum, Judy Gibson, 1954. Well, a bloke that remembers 1954 for obvious reasons. Not Judy, God rest. 45 grand finals, 93 state of origins. That's not including those midweek cup games that your dad knew about as well. But we haven't got him on to talk rugby league. We will say, well done on the weekend, though. He nailed it to the wall. He's going to tell us about his pet subject. In fact, his wife, Sher, and their pet subject. I loosely term them tyre kickers. But anyway, the journey is yours, John. Ray Warren, Talking Real Estate with John Gibson. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. And I well remember the 1954 Miss Bondi. Lovely, lovely lady. Lovely lady. Yeah. Mind you, I was only 11 when she was crowned Miss Bondi, but it was pretty easy to tell that she was a good looker.
A future Hall of Famer like yourself.
Actually, I do. That obviously, Dad's got a fairly recognisable face, but my mum is the famous photo of her down Bondi. It's a National Archive photo, and most people would know this photo but don't recognise it and know it that actually is Judy Gibson. And you go around the city and it is displayed quite often, and actually, it's amazing.
I'm looking at the photo here from the leader, isn't it? From the leader, is that story from the leader?
I think when Mum passed, they did a story.
Yeah, look at her. I'm not looking at. Yeah, look at her with the longboards, toes to the nose.
Absolutely.
She looks beautiful, mate.
She was.
Now, Dad, John said to me, do I call you Ray or Dad? I think we'll stay with Ray. This is a little corporate. Ray, he wants to know about your journey in real estate. So obviously, after I got off the floor from crying hysterically, I said, well, there's Canberra to consider, his short foray into the police force, very short. And they almost pushed him out the door. He didn't like locking up SP bookmakers. Most of them were his mates. And then I came along in young. I don't know if they bought there or rented there. What I do know, and I let you, look, mate, you take over here. What I do know is that we came to Sydney's Golden West, Seven Hills, then Northmead, then Castle Hill. John, take it away. He'll bring you up to speed. He goes okay.
Well, I'm always interested that when in everyone's property journey in terms of what made you pull the trigger on your first purchase. Was it something which you were talked into, or something, this is the way to get ahead? Talk us through that, Ray. It'd be really interesting to know where that journey started.
Yeah, it was probably, John, a case of upsizing. Mark mentioned Seven Hills. It was just a very small 3-bedroom brick home, and we came to Sydney with Mark having been born in Young, where we rented all the time. Canberra before that, I wasn't paying anything because I was in the police force and they gave you basically free rent in a government home down there, so that was good. I didn't really want to be walking the beat or being in the police force, to be honest with you. I was waiting and hoping that I could become a sports commentator one day, but getting back to Seven Hills, it was a case of upsizing, and I had bought the place, John, for $11,250, having sold a Chrysler Valiant for about $1,200. That got me the 10% deposit. My advice at the time would probably be the same advice that anybody would give now. You've got to get on the train. You've got to try and pay something off. You've got to own something. So suddenly there was this place at Northmead that was attractive to me at 26,000. So we sold Seven Hills, having bought it for 11,240. We sold it for 19,900 and went to Northmead to a bigger home, which we put an extension on. And then in 1992, we spent 20 years there. 1992, we moved to Castle Hill, and the same thing is happening here. We paid $280,000 back in 1992. It's probably worth 1.8 today, with a lot of extensions done to it. Fix this up, fix that up, and all that sort of thing. But that's briefly the real estate story.
Did in regards to winding back to your first purchase, interest rates, where were they sitting, and was it hard to get finance? What was the criteria to get finance, or was money easy available?
Well, the interest rates were much higher. I mean, they've never been as low as they are now. And I've got a vague memory that when we bought into Seven Hills, it was probably around about the 8, 9, 10% mark, but I'm absolutely guessing. I didn't find money that hard to come by, John, because I'd been, employed in the police force, and then I got into radio, and then I came to Sydney, and I was able to sort of give them what wages I was able to earn, what assets we had. We didn't really have any asset apart from the fact that we'd just sold Seven Hills. So I had no trouble getting whatever I needed in the way of cash. Interest rates, though, they were much higher. It took you a much longer period to pay off your mortgage. So that briefly is the story.
So we are basically selling on to sort of upgrade with a view.
That's right.
This is strategically a good way to get ahead for most people. Some people, they buy the property, then they go into a share portfolio, and then they spread the risk in terms of investment properties and the place you're living in. What was your strategy?
This will be interesting. Take me. What was the strategy at Seven Hills? It was getting a little bit serious.
What I'm trying to say is,
yeah.
Were you taking advice from anyone, or were you sort of just thinking, well, I've done all right out of property, I'll just keep going on this journey, or will I seek advice from someone, or I've got a fairly good eye for property? Talk me through it.
No, I basically was just doing it all on my own. People would hammer you and tell you that you got to stop renting, you got to get into a house. So I did that. It just seemed like the normal thing to do. It was like brushing your teeth. You just get into the market, you buy something, you borrow to pay it off. When you've done that, you upgrade. You just keep upgrading. That was only my fault. I didn't go out and buy investment properties. I was more in the habit of trying to put money away in my superannuation, cash I'm talking. And I'm sure it's a mistake looking back. I should have invested in property as an investment rather than just keeping cash and going down the stock exchange route.
Yeah, well, paying down the loan for a lot of people is obviously your own home it's a tax-free asset at the end of the day. And I know with my father and friends of theirs, it was always a big thing to say, pay down your loan. And then if you can get it down to zero, well, and then upgrade from there.
Yeah, that's an ideal world, though. Come on, but the reality?
Yeah, not everyone's in that position. I think everyone's different. Everyone has a different strategy moving forward. Okay. Some people are in a position where they can pay down the loan and can continue paying. Other people where they might have been relying on two wages. If someone's lost a job, things change and they've got to adjust their strategy and you try and come through the other side, So
that Seven Hills property, Ray, just stay there with Seven Hills. You're also very good friends with a bloke called Dickie Hoyle. I think he built most of the houses around that area. And very, very big in the property game, Dickie Hoyle.
Yes.
You sold that property to one of John's dad's mates also, another Channel 9er, the Bear, Ian Maurice, did you not?
Yeah, you're right. Ian Maurice, he bought the place. I told you I've been very open. I bought it for $11,240, and the bear came along only 3 years later.
Yeah,
and he paid $19,900 for it.
Oh, you're a freak, Ray.
So straight away I was convinced that I was on the right track. If you can call it strategy if you like, but
you have to take your balaclava off.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, I did, but. There was always that theory that a house will double in value every 7 years, and I was starting to believe it off the back of those figures that I just quoted to you. But where I think I made my blue, I should have been putting into my superannuation package some real estate. There's a theory out there that you need to put a third, and a third of cash, stock market, and real estate, and I didn't follow that advice in the area of real estate.
Yeah. You're going to let him get away with it, John? We're just going
Mate, that sounds good to me.
Well, you're going to take financial advice. All right.
I think he's been talking to the right people. I think it's been going all right.
LocateNegotiate.com.au. LocateNegotiate.com.au. Grey Power swept the Liberal Party to success and Mr Morrison. And now with banks, I think you've touched on giving you back, 1/4%, 0.5%, and you've told me about those bonds that you've had. You've been fortunate over the last maybe 30 years to help yourself with some super, and you talked about having some money into the stock market. But Grey Power are also the people that may well, John and Ray, talking to you collectively, may well have the balance of power, if that's a pun, when it comes to bouncing back on the other side of this China virus and in relation to be able to spend money on property. Would I be right there that Grey Powder will have that money, that super, that money that may have been in the bank where they're going, wow, what do I do now?
Well, it just depends on people's where they are at in life. Some people are already set up. If it's talking about Grey Power, people are already in retirement. I guess the biggest challenge for people who are in retirement is that they having their money in the bank in cash, it's not earning anything. So people are either, depending on, they've got self-managed super funds set up, they can obviously, if they want to go and buy property and investment property, they can. But generally, it's depending on their age and where they're at in their life. Some people like the thought of having the money in the bank, even if it's earning them very little. It's safe haven. Do they want to roll the dice and go into property? And it's just where people are with their funds. A lot of people are tied up in stocks. That's where they see they can earn money at the moment. So I think that...
Do you see a property boom looming?
You've got your first home buyers there, and you've got the first home buyer schemes there for people. They don't have to pay stamp duty under $800,000. So that the demand is going to be there. You've got historical low interest rates, which, in my opinion, are going to continue on for some time yet. So then you've got I think the government, the state government, the federal government, they're going to be sort of bringing in sort of initiatives to sort of grow the economy. And then you've got the easing of credit through the banks. I think through the Royal Commission, that things tightened up. I think lending criteria will loosen up a little bit. And then you've got the return of overseas buyers and students, which aren't coming in at the moment. So, you factor that when things starting to get back to normality next year, I think you're going to find that probably, heading towards the second half of next year, I think you're going to see an incoming tide in regards to the property market.
Ray, any questions for John? LocateNegotiate.com.au, your buyer's agent. Any questions for John?
Well, yeah, I'm probably not the best person to be asking questions about where we're going to be next year, because I'm one of those people that I'm fairly comfortable if I leave my money in the bank and it's basically earning 0%, because there's a risk factor out there with putting tenants in an investment property too. You could find yourself chasing, rents. You could find yourself dealing with a number of problems by getting involved in investment properties, and that's not necessarily a negative for people getting involved. But what people don't understand, unless they are members of the older community, and I am, you've worked hard to earn this money, and you're not prepared to take a risk. So.
And especially now, we're in COVID-19 times. We're in unprecedented times.
John, I'll be honest with you. I was only really forced to start saving in about the early 90s, and I was able to get 8% for my cash. So that wasn't too bad, and today I'm able to get 1%. But I'm still comfortable because I don't want to take any major risks. I'm not comfortable having money in the stock exchange, to be honest with you.
Oh, thanks very much. You encouraged me.
I'm encouraging you to do it because you're much younger. You see,
thank goodness.
Real estate, and stock market. The financial consultants will tell you they're a long-term thing. You put them in the bottom drawer and forget about them.
Yeah,
they're right.
You're right with real estate. I mean, a lot of people get talked into looking for the quick buck in real estate or any asset class. Plenty of people will spruik it and tell them that they're going to sort of get an easy dollar, but really, in reality, that's not going to happen. So,
and don't forget, Jono, you're paying. If you buy something, say $1 million worth of real estate, an apartment or whatever, out here where I live in the Hills District. You're up on $1 million. I think you pay about $40,000 stamp duty. Yep. It takes a fair while to save up the $40,000 or get it back in rent even.
Absolutely. So we're definitely in. This year has been. It's been like no other in terms of where we're at with the economy, and we're in a sort of a recession, and what's going to happen next year when the job keeper and the job seeker will come off the boil, and but I think that we're, in some respects here in Australia, we're luckier than most countries. And look, I still think that we will, when things settle down, we will bounce back. And, I think that at the end of the day, I think that property is going to hold its own. But with most things, that people need to come in and do their homework before they commit to anything.
LocateNegotiate.com.au. It's not what you spend, it's what you save. Just finally, Ray, because we know it's a busy time for you, Origin just around the corner, give us one of your great friends, Jack Gibson. Have you got one Jack Gibson story as we talk about John Gibson in real estate from a great family, as you know, and I mentioned Judy Gibson at the top of our interview. Have you got a Jack one there that is fresh in your mind?
Oh, there's a few stories that I could tell about Jack, but he used to frighten me. Actually, I was intimidated by Jack and his left-hand man, Ron Massey. I as a young journo, I was always apprehensive about having to go out and get an interview with either of them. I remember I was interviewing Jack one day, and being a young upstart of a commentator, I said to him, "Well, it seems you've got a problem in the centres, Mr. Gibson. What are we going to do?" And he said, "I'm not quite sure, Ray. What do you think you'd do?" And I thought, well, where do I go from here? And I was trying to think who's in the reserves that's any better than what we've already got, because that's another theory. It's all very well to talk about replacing somebody, but Jack always said, "Do you think he's going to be any better than the one we got, Ray?" You know.
Yeah.
And
I was confronted by some serious lines of questions over my time living at home, so growing up with him.
It was just so funny, and I had a game of golf with him, and I can't chip to save myself. He said, "Ray, it's the easiest thing in the world to do, mate. Just let the club drop on the ball." I thought, oh, Jesus. You know, it was hilarious. So I travelled to New Zealand and back 3 weekends in a row, sat next to him.
Was that in 88, 89? Was that when the...
Yeah, exactly right.
I flew over one of those tours. I was on there for one of those tours.
And he sat there, John, with a clipboard, and he wrote beautifully. He had beautiful handwriting.
Yeah,
and I was peeking over his shoulder, you know, peeking over the top of his fur-skin coat. And he was writing down these one-liners that he became famous for. And then he would sit in the box, and he'd have that clipboard with all the sayings on it, and if anything appropriate happened in the game, his eyes and his mind would flick straight to the one that he'd written down. No, I've got nothing but fond memories of the big fella, even though, as I said, he intimidated me. That doesn't mean he hated me, and it doesn't mean I hated him. It was just I was frightened of him, you know.
He was an intimidating...
A bit like Kerry Packer, you know. People say, "Kerry Packer, what did you make of him?" I said, "I was scared of him." He'd come around the OB trucks when the meal was being served, and I'd disappear. I couldn't disappear quick enough. I was absolutely intimidated by him.
Did you not once, before we let you go for the second time, did you not once guest speak, and you're the MC, and you said that I do this job for nothing?
Is this the Packer story?
And did not Mr. Packer sit at the back of the room and say, "Well, give me back me stuff and money then"?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, I said, look, I love doing what I'm doing. I said, I've got the best job in the world. I said, and I do it for nothing. But and then I didn't know that Packer was there, and he was up in the back corner.
Yeah.
Wentworth Hotel, Sydney. He said, "Well, why don't you give me back me money and we'll start again?" I thought, oh, Jesus, that's his voice. He's here.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Well, thank you, Ray, for coming on, and much appreciated. And I will get back to that email you sent me through. And
what email?
Well, I can't tell you. I can't disclose.
Well, there you go. Confidentiality.
So it might have something to do with the property. But,
okay.
But I'm not supposed to tell Ray's wife.
Oh, sure. Well, she's the Minister for War and Finance, but she'll move tomorrow. But
I'm not supposed to say
I've just listened to about 20 minutes of Ray give what I call, in boxing terms, necessary alibis for all the reasons he hasn't purchased more property. It's a very good afternoon to you, Father.
Okay, in the name of the Father and the Son, Amen.
There he is.
Thank you, Ray. Much appreciated.
Next time, talking real estate with Gibbo, John Gibson.
Like that?
Yeah. And brought to you by Locate Negotiate by Gibbo, John Gibson. Did all the scary headlines come true about media reports and the market tanking back in 2018-19? So what really happened to property investors? We'll ask John Gibson. The impact of the COVID-19 recession, the impact on owners, on renters and businesses, all that much more. Can't wait to do it.
There's a lot to talk about, Mark, and looking forward to it.
John Gibson, until next time, it's bye for now.